Welcome back to the Content Marketing Playbook. It's your host, Josh Culler with Culler.media. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about where and how to distribute your content marketing. These are two things that I was tempted to kind of form two different podcast episodes for this. So one podcast on where to distribute your content and another podcast episode to talk about how to. I might actually do that in the future, but I really wanted to bring both of them to you today for the sole purpose of they go really hand in hand with each other. So we're going to be talking about where and how to distribute your content. So we're going to go pretty deep into that. But before I get into it, if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the podcast, to the Content Marketing Playbook, whatever platform you're listening on. Much appreciate it. If you have any questions, whether it's a topic that you want me to cover, whether it's a question that you have about the topic that we're talking about today, or any questions in content marketing in general, shoot me an email, josh@cullermedia.com, Culler spelled Culler. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. And forgive me, my seat keeps going down, so we're going to get that fixed. But anyway, let's talk about today's topic. So where and how to distribute your content marketing. I think a lot of people get mixed up with trying to put their content out everywhere, which is not a good strategy, because if you put your content out everywhere, then you're just going to get shiny object syndrome. You know, you're gonna not be able to pinpoint and nail down where your leads are coming in, if they do come in with through your content marketing, which is the direction you want to go. So I'm going to kind of give you the synopsis of what you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about where to put your content, and then how to actually make that happen. So there's two core principles I always tell people when it comes to content marketing. Number one is, who is your target audience? Point blank, like, you should know that. If you have a business and you're going to be putting content marketing out, you should know who your target audience is. This is their interests. What jobs do they have? Where do they work? Their age demographic, their demographic location-wise, their geographical location, stuff like that. These are all things that you should be knowing about your target audience. The next thing that I always tell people is, where are they at? Now, this is going to be more relevant to the topic we're talking about today, but where are they at? That is so crucial when it comes to content marketing, because you want to be putting your content out where your audience is. That makes sense, right? You want to actually be focused on where their attention is drawn to, whether that is a social media platform or that is direct mail. I was just on a podcast with Mike Hambright, one of my good buddies and one of my clients, for his podcast, Flip Nerd. And I use the example of, if you're going to do direct mail marketing for your real estate investing business, don't send it to me, right? And I'm more than likely not your target audience, because the target audience that most real estate investors go after is 45 and older, because those are the people that are in the demographic that are going to have a property that they own free and clear and want to get rid of. Maybe it has repairs that need to be done that they don't want to do, or they're going through pre-foreclosure or whatever. That's the demographic they're going after. So those people are highly more likely to actually check their direct mail, as opposed to somebody like myself. I'm 26 years old. If it's not a bill, or if it's not, a letter, a happy birthday card from grandma and grandpa, it's going directly in the trash can. I don't care what it is. Because if it's truly something, most of my accounts, or almost all my accounts, are paperless. So I don't get bills in the mail. So that's the truth. And that's why it's so important to know where your audience is, because if somebody's sending direct mail to me, they're wasting money, because I'm not that person that's checking their direct mail in their marketing. So that goes to content marketing as well. So if your target demographic is not an 18-year-old, high school girl that likes to listen to, I don't know, Migos or whatever hip hop artist is out there right now, then you should not be on TikTok, period. I've had so many people ask me about, should we be on TikTok? Let's be on TikTok because Gary Vee says we should. And you guys know I'm a massive Gary Vee fan. But at the same time, this is one thing that I disagree with about this, is that, if your target audience is not on TikTok, which they should not be. I mean, just the fact that most kids, with some of the kids that my wife nannies, they have referenced Facebook as that platform that old people use. That's the social media platform that old people use. But hey, if that's your target audience, that's where you need to be. So it's important to know where your target audience is, because this is where you're going to be. This is the foundation of where you're putting your content out. And if that means they're only on one or two platforms, then only put content out on one or two platforms. If they're on 7, then you need to, analyze that and make sure that that's the truth, that they're on and actively using the platform. Then you can put content out there. And then the next step would be to, create content that's relevant to the platform. So for instance, a large portion of my target demographic listens to podcasts, hence why you're listening to the podcast right now. That's why I'm putting podcasts out, because a very large demographic that I market to listen to podcasts. So that's one example that I want to give. But what I would say is pick the core of where they are and go there. And like I said, if your audience, let's just say for instance, your audience, my seat keeps going down. I don't know why that's doing that, but we're going to leave it up there. So I'm trying to like stretch out here. But let's just say, for instance, your audience is on 7 different platforms. Don't go to all 7 at once, because I'm going to give an example here. That's my next point, is curate the content. But you want to build that content specific to the platform. So you want to start with 2, 3, maybe 4 different platforms that your target audience is at, and create content for that, and then open it up to these other ones. So obviously you'll pick the top 2 platforms that your audience is active on, and then create content for that. So that's important to understand, is where are they at, the core of what platforms they use, and go hard at those. For instance, for me, my target demographic is heavily uses Facebook, heavily listens to podcasts, heavily watches YouTube videos, and they're starting to get on Instagram. So those are the 4 platforms that I distribute content to extremely hard, because that's exactly where they're at. And then that leads me into the next point, which is curate your content for that platform. So again, for instance, if your platform is Facebook, you should not be using, if you're shooting a 60-second video, do not post the video in a horizontal landscape. The reason being is because you want to take up as much of that phone screen as possible. So you need to shoot the video in vertical or in square. So that's how you want to get it posted. So it's important to understand this. And again, with Instagram, like we were just talking with my team, we have our weekly meetings, the Color Media team, and we've been creating thumbnails for IGTV videos, but they've been in the long format, the vertical format, the thumbnails have been, but it doesn't show up on the Instagram feed, because the Instagram feed only shows square content. So we've had to, adjust and create the thumbnails to be square as opposed to vertical. So that's important to understand. And this is why, like, knowing your audience, but then knowing the platforms very well where they hang out, that's what you want to do. And then same thing, like if people use websites, if your target audience uses websites heavily, do not put content on your website that is square or vertical. It's got to be horizontal video, right? And then also articles. Like articles are big for SEO purposes on your website. So create and curate content specifically for that. Again, like if, let's just say your audience is on Twitter, you're not going to post a 4, 5, 6 sentence blog post or paragraph on a Twitter feed, because that's not the content that belongs on Twitter. It's 1 sentence, 5, 6, 7 words long that you want on Twitter. So make sure you're understanding that and curate the content. Again, like hashtags, Instagram, that's big. Facebook, don't use hashtags because it's not relevant. Nobody searches hashtags on Facebook. LinkedIn is becoming a little bit more that direction. They're using hashtags. So curate the content, which basically means adjust and create the content, build it around the platform. You don't ever want to create content and just distribute it everywhere where it's not relevant to all the platforms. So make sure you do that. Next tip that I have for you is create a schedule for distribution. I think people overthink this, right? The reason why I say this is because I want to make sure that you understand that you definitely want to have a system and a schedule for the content you put out, whether that's one video every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. or that's one podcast on Fridays at 9 a.m. or whatever it is. Create a consistent schedule for this because what it does is it holds you accountable and it creates a consistency factor for you. I'll just be honest with you. For me, I use Todoist. That's my schedule. So for instance, this podcast, I knew I needed to record this podcast in order to go out today. And so what I did was on Todoist, I have you produce content marketing playbook every Monday at 5 p.m. or whatever, or I don't even remember what it is, but that's what I have. And it reoccurs, the to-do reoccurs every single Monday at 5 p.m. And so it's important for you to create that schedule because one, it keeps you on track, but it keeps you consistent, which when it comes to marketing, when it comes to content marketing, especially, you all know that I say content marketing is a marathon. And what are marathons? It's consistent effort into getting to the finish line. And it's a long distance, right? Whereas advertising is a sprint. So if you stay consistent with your content marketing, the only way you can really do that is if you have a system and a schedule to actually get that content out. So make sure you do that. Again, I used to do this. You could use Google Calendar to reoccur, a calendar event that reoccurs where it says post video of blank on Monday at 5 p.m. every Monday at 5 p.m. So just have that. There's a lot of like systems out there and a lot of like HubSpot and a couple other platforms that allow you to, create a schedule or a plan for your content. I don't really buy into that because a lot of times they're complicated and people don't keep to them. So keep it simple, keep it very specific, but keep it simple. That's important to understand. And then the other thing is you can schedule content out. And now we're talking about really the distribution side of the content. So how to actually put it out. I always recommend using the platform natively. So if you have a Facebook business page, you can schedule any content out that you want. You can schedule out a post, whether it was text or image or a video or an article or whatever. You could schedule that out. Same thing for YouTube. Now, I understand there's platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter where you can't actually schedule out posts to go. So you got to post it natively. But if there's a platform out there and you are able to schedule it natively on that platform, I always recommend that just because it makes it simple. There's not really an answer out there if it actually shows up in the algorithm a lot more or not. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's still something that you could take into consideration if you want to. Plus, the platforms are going to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to schedule content out. Another thing you could do is use a third-party distributor, which most of these will have a calendar function where you can schedule content out, every Monday at blank or whatever. We use Loomly, Loomly. I talked about it on last week's podcast, my top tools for content marketing. We've used Buffer and Hootsuite and a couple others before. We just found that Loomly is the most reliable. For some reason with Buffer, we were having a lot of times where accounts would get disconnected or whatever. They would expire or something like that, or they just wouldn't push out to the platforms. And so we were having issues with that. So we decided to go with Loomly. It had the highest reviews for consistency and being able to actually use it and have it not fail for us. And it's been good for us. So we use it primarily for like Facebook and there's some platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram. It's harder to schedule content out because they don't want you to. They want you to actually post it natively. So just keep that in mind when you're going through and figuring it out. But I do recommend Buffer or Hootsuite just because they're the biggest. Just be careful with that. Making sure that the content goes out and, it's because sometimes we would schedule content to go out and it wouldn't go out and we would look and it said there was an error, but it wouldn't send us a notification or anything. So that's what I've got. So that's how. Now, the last thing I want to end it here with is one simple concept that I get this question all the time. Josh, when is too much content too much? My answer is never. So here's the bottom line is you can never distribute too much content. The reason being is because here's the progression. No matter how sciencey or how, methodical or analytical a marketer wants to make it, the algorithms for social media are extremely simple. If somebody likes your content, that means they're going to engage with it, which means they will see it more. So normally here's the progression. They like you, they like your message, they like your truth, they like what you're putting out. So they'll like your comment, which could result in a like, but it's more engagement. So they engage in your content, which means that they share it, like it, comment, or whatever. So they like you, they like your content, they'll engage with it. And by engaging with it, the more they engage with it, the more they're going to see it, which means it's relevant to them. So for instance, I engage with Gary Vaynerchuk's content a lot. So I always see his content consistently. I interact with the NFL's Instagram account a lot. So I see their content on a consistent basis. And they put out tons of content, right? So I see that all the time, but it's okay with me because it's relevant and it's valuable to me. And it's something that I want to see. Now, on the other hand, there's platforms, there's accounts out there, I never see their content. And that's because I don't per se like their content, which means I don't engage with their content, which means I'm not going to see their content. So you can never put out too much content. And a lot of times you'll even go through the feed and you'll see a post that says posted a week ago. Like, why is that? And that's just the way the algorithms work. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And no, don't let marketers complicate this whole process, but that's just the bottom line. So basically the progression is, if they like you, they're going to like your content. If they like your content, they're going to engage with your content. If they engage with your content, they're going to see more of it, which means at the end of the day, you can't put out too much content. So that's what I got for you guys today. Hopefully that helped out and provided a little bit of direction on where to put content out and how to distribute it. Again, don't get shiny object syndrome. Make sure you're focusing on who your audience is and where they're hanging out. And that's the most important thing. Don't worry about all these other trends and all these other platforms popping up everywhere. Don't try to, be the hero and go out and, post content there. Be the first one, especially if you're a business. Now, if you're an influencer, that might be a little bit of a different story. But if you're a business marketing to a direct consumer or a direct target audience, only go there if your audience is there. Only go to the platform if your audience is actually active on it. So just keep that in mind, which we're all in business to make money. We're all in business to bring in leads and make money, right? So that's what we got for you. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me on the Content Marketing Playbook. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed, leave a review on Apple Podcasts if that's how you're listening, and then reach out to me if you have any questions. Happy to answer any questions and communicate with you if you would like. Josh at culler.media.com, colored spelled CULLER. Shoot me an email if you have any questions about this episode specifically, or any topics you would like for me to cover in the future, or you just want to make conversation, make a new friend. Reach out to me. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.